The Supreme Court has just handed the Trump administration a major win on an immigration policy tied closely to Colorado. Court ruled this afternoon that the administration can resume its fast-track deportations of people it claims are members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, which the Trump administration says is run out of Colorado. By a 5-4 vote, the court has lifted a judge's nationwide orders putting a pause on flights of migrants down to a notorious prison in El Salvador. The conservative justices in the majority ruled that each immigrant must instead file their own petition to stop their deportation and must do that wherever in the U.S. the administration sends them along the way. The minority justices said that allows the Trump administration to move migrants to places with conservative judges, namely Texas. The minority justices pointed to another case where the Trump administration has said that even if it does deport people in error, it can't get them back from El Salvador. Advocates in Colorado say a man here was disappeared to the prison in El Salvador without the opportunity to prove in court that he was not a TDA gang member. A review by CBS News found 75% of the deportees to El Salvador did not have a criminal record in the U.S.
All right, so we got great news coming in from the Supreme Court today. This is the fourth big victory for the Trump administration this week. And you know what? The liberal media is doing everything they can to downplay it. At the end of that last report that you just heard at the beginning of the video, where it says CBS News reports that 75% of those deported did not have a criminal record in the U.S. Now, any slow listener, on like most Democrat blue voters are, will think that means, 75% of them didn't even have a criminal record. You see, they're really good at manipulating the words, but it said did not have a criminal record in the U.S. Many of them had just gotten here. They were hiding out. They were in prison in their country or in the insane asylum in their country and came here. And if 75% of them didn't, guess what that means? 25% of them did. And that range everything from assault to a young person, to a child, or to taking somebody's life, to robbery, to whatever it is, they need to be gone. Even if they don't have a criminal record here in the U.S., what do? Wait until they build one up and then say, all right, they finally matched their record in El Salvador, Cuba, or Brazil, or wherever they're from. They finally matched it. Now it's time for them to go. These people are insane. They make me sick. And it just sent a message to these left-wing, libtard, extremist judges. You will not be able to meddle in the business of the president. Because did you know what a district court judge would typically, with federal judges and whatnot, there's like a review board that they have to go through. With a district court judge, they're their own review. So there is no one to counter the decision that they're making or the injunctions that they're putting in. Since 1963, there have been 127 injunctions. 64 of those have been against President Trump, 15 of them within the last 2 months alone. So, one of the things I love to do is after these victories, I like to make videos and share the information with you of how the lamestream liberal left-wing arm of the Democrat Party, we call the media, is coping with so many W's that we keep getting full on all the victories. So I'm not going to do too much talking. We're going to get into this CNN clip. I'm going to add some commentary here and there because this is hilarious. I love watching the cope. Right on President Trump, right on MAGA movement, right on America First. On top of the markets getting better like they did when people were panicking. I know folks that literally, folks online were cashing in their 401ks, y'all. I'm talking about paying 33% penalty, paying down some credit cards or whatnot, just for at the end of the night and to wake up this morning that the market's not only recovered, they're up. So now they'll be working until they're 108 years old. All because they listen to the left-wing, libtard, extremist media and say, the sky is falling. And they're the same ones that said Biden was mentally capable. Kamala was black. Kamala was going to win. Trump would be in prison. The border was secure. Inflation was transitory. And yet these people just continue to like the beating. But let me, I digress. Let's get into this.
Another win, allowing his administration to fire hundreds of probationary federal workers. I want to get straight to Paula Reed, who is looking through the decision. Paula, what did they say?
So, Dana, this is a significant win for the administration. The fourth one that they have notched from the Supreme Court in just the past few days. Here, this decision is focused on thousands of fired probationary federal workers. Now, this decision will allow the government to keep those individuals off the payroll, while the larger questions about these firings are litigated. Now, this was decided not on a constitutional issue or really on the merits. It was decided on something called standing, which is whether the individuals who brought this lawsuit had the right to do so. And here the court says that the 9 nonprofit organizations did not have standing in this case. So again, this is sort of a technical win, but it is still a win for the administration, though it's unclear how this will apply to all fired probationary workers, because a separate judge in Maryland earlier this month ordered a pause and a reinstatement of some employees that are not covered by this case. But I do want to say, Dana, the Justice Department, the Trump administration, they've been waiting for a while for good news from the courts after a string of losses, and they have been getting a lot of good news from the high court over the past few days.
Okay, Paula, stand by, because I do want to come back to you
Dana hates
in
that
a short
one.
while about other topics the Supreme Court is dealing with, explicitly immigration. But first, I want to talk about this breaking news with the terrific group of reporters with me today: CNN's Jamie Gangel, Zolan Kano-Youngs of the New York Times, and Leanne Caldwell of Puck. Okay, so transparency, we literally just got this in. We're looking at it right now. We did hear from the great Paula Reed explaining it. Jamie, I'm going to go to the daughter of a judge right now. Not a Supreme Court justice, but she might as well be.
Still very important.
Very important. And I do think, obviously, a win is a win.
Right.
Having said that, this isn't the final word from the Supreme Court on that very crucial question about whether or not the Trump administration has the right to fire the probationary employees as they did.
If you enjoyed this video, do me a solid, hit that like button, because I'll never ask you for a cash out or a super chat, but you hitting that like button, it really helps the channel. And if you aren't subscribed, subscribe to the Real Politics Podcast. On this channel, that's what we do. We talk real politics. So once you subscribe, all you got to do is hit the notification bell and then just select all. That way, you'll be notified when I upload new videos. You notice something? They always downplay it, like how she just said, you know, this isn't the final word. And here's another kicker. Do y'all remember in 2021, under the Biden administration, when people in the military and in the private sector were being fired left and right, all because they refused to put an experimental jab into their arm? These people were terminated. And you know what the liberal media did and the Democrats did? They celebrated people being fired. They said that they deserved to be fired. People that had dedicated their life to the American military had their rank stripped and were booted out. People that were working for companies 15, 20, 30 years had dedicated themselves to the medical industry because they did not abide by the ruler, Joe Biden's rule, which is you have to be willing to let them put this experimental thing in your arm. These people were let go, and the Democrats danced about it, and the media danced about it and said, rightfully so. Now they're going crazy over all these government employees, all these. That's because they know Joe Biden's job growth was BS. 80% of it was government jobs. Democrats love a bloated government. They love more red tape. They love the more red tape they create, the more people they need. See, they create all these departments. Then they got to staff it. Then they need another department to monitor that department. Then another department to monitor that department. And it takes you 20 years to get an approval on getting something fixed in your city or getting high-speed internet, which the Biden administration had $40 billion, that $40 billion plan to put high-speed internet across the rural plains. Not one home has gotten high-speed internet yet to this day. You know why? It takes it. Nobody's completed it yet, but we're talking about 5 years and nobody has made it through the application process yet.
Correct. So we are going inch by inch, step by step through the courts. It is a win today. Big picture, we're going to have to wait and see. I just want to go, 30,000 feet for a moment and talk about the context of this,
Yes.
though. When you get a ruling like this, and these people have been told that they're not going to get paid when they're on leave, there's a reality. They have to go out and find another job.
Oh, be like
at
normal people?
least for most of these people, this is pushing them out of government. It is a brain drain. Probationary employees are not just young people coming in for the first time. They can be extremely experienced. A lawyer for 20 years who's just taken a new job in the government. So, the sources I've talked to across the government are really concerned, once again, that when something like this happens, federal workers are not the enemy. We are losing experience and expertise.
Yeah, I'm so
Yeah, but they're also not the engine that gets the machine of the country going either. These people aren't more important than private sector workers. Matter of fact, most of the jobs they do can be simplified probably to a smaller group of people easily. And she acts like, oh, like they're just kicked off the planet Earth. They have to go look for jobs like everybody else. You see, our government, man, that's why I'm so glad we don't have any left. Oh, God, the Kamala and Tim Walz would have destroyed.
You mentioned that this isn't just, 20-somethings who just graduated from college and are in for their first job. There are a lot of people who were hired recently from the private sector, many of whom took a big pay cut in order to work in the public sector. And what we are talking about here is about 16,000 people, 16,000 probationary employees who lost their jobs as part of these cuts.
Probably the IRS agents buying
that there were two liberal justices who publicly dissented, Sonia Mayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, also with probationary workers, sometimes it's also people who just got promotions who were previously in the government too, or had worked in the government and they were promoted and then lost their jobs because of this. But, when we were hearing about this case before we came on air, this is part of the administration's plan. They knew that there were going to be lawsuits, many of them. They knew that they were going to go through the courts, but they were very confident that the Supreme Court was going to side with them in many cases. And so this is the second day in a row that has happened. And so you have to imagine that the administration is feeling very good right now.
And it's also just part of a broader strategy to make things tougher for the federal workforce as they try to cut the federal bureaucracy and downsize it. That's not just done through putting people on leave, but pursuing actions that make people uncomfortable to the point where they leave voluntarily as well. And you may leave voluntarily if you're not getting paid.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Paula Reed because, as I mentioned, there is another big story out of the High Court today. The justices are ruling, in fact, they did so late last night, that the Trump administration can use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to carry out deportations. Here's what the White House said when it discussed what it is calling a big win for its immigration agenda.
This was a huge, a monumental victory for President Trump, the biggest legal win of this administration so far. This is a monumental, colossal victory for the rule of law, for the Constitution.
It's not quite that simple. The court also set up some guardrails for migrants who want to challenge their deportations. Okay, I now want to go back to Paula Reed to explain what we're talking about with this nuance here. Paula.
Look, Stephen Miller is correct that this is the biggest victory the administration has scored so far when it comes to testing President Trump's expansive use of executive power. But as you noted, this was not a total victory. This was a partial victory because while the Supreme Court sided with the administration, it did place limitations on how they can use these powers, saying that immigrants should get a chance to contest their deportations. So people who are deported should receive notice. They are subject to this act and an opportunity to have their removal reviewed by a federal court where they're being detained. And that is significant because one of the reasons they wanted to use the Alien Enemies Act is to speed up deportations. But look, this is undoubtedly a green light for the administration in terms of Trump's expansive use of executive power. Also, this is happening in a case where a federal judge is looking at whether the administration intentionally defied his initial pause on the use of this act. So this is significant. And as Leanne and others were noting, this has always been the long game that Stephen Miller and others at the Justice Department have been playing. They believe that even if they were initially deterred by lower courts, that when these questions eventually got to the justices, that the conservative supermajority would see things their way. And for now, they have the green light to go ahead with this.
I hate how they put that. No, it has nothing to do with conservative supermajority. It has everything to do with the president being well within his rights as the executive of the executive branch. But see how they try to downplay it and make it more like it's partisan? No, what's partisan is those 4 dissenting judges, including Amy Coney Barrett. I'm sick and tired of her. She is such a freaking traitor. She might as well just be a Democrat. Thank goodness that it's a 6-3 court. Thank goodness we had 5 judges that were willing to stand strong. And I'm sure with them, they just know right is right. And within the law, the president has the advantage. So they're making it like it's just because they're conservative justices. No, what it does with them being conservative justices, we can guarantee that if it's going to be done by the book, they're going to do it right by the book. If they were liberal judges, it could have been 1000% by the book, and they still would have went against it because they're activist liberal judges. And I'm talking about Ketanji Brown and Sotomayor and even Amy Coney Barrett now. These folks are nothing more than activists in robes that have been pushed and promoted to the high court. And these libtards, their coat, look at their faces. Look right there on that screen. You see Dana Bash face? Look at that lady face. You know what I'm saying? They can't stand the fact that President Trump keeps getting full on the W's and that the American people see it. They're doing everything they can to create a mirage. And ain't it also funny, and I know y'all hear this, when Democrats try to tell Trump supporters how much buyer's remorse we got. It's like, just because y'all are miserable with your politicians and you hate what they're doing, because they're doing a terrible job, you know, don't think we're feeling like that. Misery loves company. And these people feel so sorry and bad about their people. They just assume that we do. No, we voted for this. Matter of fact, many of us think President Trump has been being very, very mild. He's been playing it right. Nobody can say he's violating the courts. Nobody can say he's being a dictator. Remember, a dictator, he wouldn't be going through any of this court stuff. He would just be, sledgehammering his way through. But he's doing it the right way, and he's gaining the trust of the people. President Trump grew 17 points amongst black voters. He also increased 6% amongst Democrats and independents. He also has increased in between 18 to 29-year-old demographic. So where they keep saying, oh, people are losing faith, his numbers keep getting stronger.
Yeah, they do. Paula, thank you so much. And Zelen, you've covered immigration for a while, not to mention the courts, which is really what we're talking about here. What's your take and what's your reporting on this?
So this ruling really was on procedural grounds, basically saying that it was filed in the wrong place. But I think Paula hit the right point, where they are saying that they can move forward using the Alien Enemies Act. But the central motivation the administration had to use this act was to deport people without due process, to do it rapidly. And the part of this ruling essentially also says that you need to provide these migrants the chance to actually review this and potentially oppose it, to challenge this too. So now, how does this work? This is a real question. How do you pursue and use an authority that essentially they've been arguing eliminates due process, or at least allows you to deport someone with little to no due process, when the court is actually saying you now need to give that opportunity?
Right, it does seem very contradictory.
It does. So now how does this play out here as they continue to use this?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm about over this crap. You know, at the end of the day, it's a W. You got this wannabe activist, and they trip me out. They go get these black people that got these big hairdos and these glasses, kind of like that fat black guy with the glasses that was talking about doing away with all voter registrations and all of this crap. They get these Poindexter people on there who has no idea what the real world is like. They grew up in these Ivy League schools and they bought into this blue BS, and they put them on there and acting like what they're saying is just going to be so profound. It's not. They don't know what they're talking about, and they're always trying to downplay President Trump's wins, and I'm sick and tired of it. It's a huge W. They know it's a huge W. That's why they're trying to downplay it. If it wasn't anything, you wouldn't say, oh, it's not all that, or da-da-da. They know how big this is. And I assure you, the Trump administration will figure a way to streamline and steamroll those quote unquote hearings. And here's the kicker. These people came into the country illegally. You don't get due process in other countries when you come in there illegally. And they trip me out with this. But anybody can come into our country and then fight and act like you're going to make a case on why you shouldn't be thrown out. Oh, my God. These people are so anti-American. I wish there was a way we could take them and just drop them in one of those socialist countries that they feel is so great, where the government just has control and everything the government says. And if you talk mean about somebody, you can go to jail. I wish we could put them there and just watch them like a fish in a bowl. Oh, that'll make me so happy. But I just wanted to jump on and share the W with you. Another victory for the MAGA team, for the America First movement, for the Trump administration, for you and for I. And we are here for it. So congratulations to you. And if you watched this far, I want to say thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you haven't already, hit that like button, share the video, leave a comment. What do you think about these W's? What do you think about these big wins? I'm happy about them. Subscribe to the channel if you hasn't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And most importantly, make sure you be safe and have a great day. I'm Brian Maxwell saying thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out, y'all.